So, hello, my name is Howard Blumenthal, and this is another episode of Reinventing School. We've been doing a series of individual hours about social studies and math and a few other. Actually, we'll eventually do all of the main subjects that are taught in school, at least K through 8 or so. And today we're going to talk about physical education and touch on health. We may or may not do a separate issue about health. They're awfully closely related. So here's sort of an opening question that I've been thinking about. So when we talk about social studies, or we talk about mathematics, or we talk about English, um, we tend to do those for many grades, if not for every one, 5 days a week. And we make sure we, do things that people remember, and we test everybody incessantly on the theory that these are the skills that you will need for your whole life. And then pretty much we stop teaching them because we lose interest. I'm not really sure, but somewhere around age 18, or if you want to continue on through college, 21, maybe a little longer. But there is this other subject that we give 1 hour a week to, sometimes two, but often if there's a snow day or something else, physical education is the first thing to get canceled. And yet, it seems to me that it's really the only subject that you actually need for your entire life. So somewhere something got scrambled, or I'm not understanding this possibly, which is certainly within the realm of possibility as well. So we've gathered together a group of experts from different grades, from national overview, local, all of that, to try to get a handle on where physical education is today, whether it's substantially different from what it's been in the past, where we might be heading in the future, and why we're not doing this 3 times a day, every day, because it seems as though, and we'll get into this, that in order to learn, you've got to be constantly exercising your brain as well. So there's a lot of stuff that doesn't make sense, but hey, this is reinventing school. And, we've talked about things that don't make sense now since May. So I'm just sort of delving into another cave that probably doesn't make a lot of sense either. So, with that, Brett, could you introduce yourself and tell us what you do and all that, and kind of express a view or two, if you would.
Oh, absolutely. So my name is Brett Fuller. I am the curriculum specialist for health and physical education for Milwaukee Public Schools in Wisconsin. I'm also the Shape America president right now.
What is Shape
And
America? That's not a
Shape
term I
America
know.
is the Society of Health and Physical Educators. It is the national association, a professional association for health and physical education teachers in the United States.
Okay. And when you do what you do, how many times a day do you exercise?
For me, personally, I exercise every day. I try to get in either an hour run, or during the winter when it's not necessarily safe to run, an hour walk every morning. Today I couldn't do it, so I did that hour walk at lunch. So I try to get an hour a day of physical activity at minimum.
Okay. And when you're physical activitying, what are you doing?
During the nicer months of the year, I try to do biking one day, then I walk the next day. I don't do enough resistance training. I know that that's something I got to build into my routine, but I do get my cardio.
And for those of us who are not necessarily up with the lingo, resistance training is going to be strength training.
Strength training, it doesn't have to be weights, but it can be body weight exercises of different types. But it's just as important as actually the cardio, according to many of the journal articles.
And you primarily work in an office, I would assume, with other education administrators or similar?
Yes, I work at Central Services and have done so for 14 years now. Before then, I was a physical education teacher. So I was on my feet all the time as a physical education teacher, but moving into central office was a big change and a significant drop in my physical activity levels. And matter of fact, early on in this career, I did not, in my change, I did not get all the exercise I needed to.
So
So
central office sounds to me like David Letterman's home office a little bit. I'm assuming this is your board of education or something similar.
correct, yes, it's our Board of Education.
Okay.
So it's a fairly large building in a district with 150 schools. So we have hundreds of people work in this office building. I have one office in it.
And every day, I would assume, because these are the people who are setting, who are the role models and really making the decisions for the district, that they exercise every day as well, right?
Oh, absolutely not. Um, Matter of fact, it's one of those things that we don't even have a fitness center in our building, and there really isn't room for it, is what we've been told by our facilities people. And so I'm approached weekly, if not more often, by people saying, why don't you get a fitness center in here, Brett? Because you're the physical education guy. So, and I've tried for 14 years, and I'll keep on advocating.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, Crystal, you are in Memphis area, where at least this week you're experiencing some cold. Um, so exercising indoors, outdoors? I mean, I would assume that if it's usually on the warmer side, that people are usually outside a lot. Um, Tell me about outside in the Memphis area for the kids. You're doing up to sixth grade or something, right? So are they
Yeah,
getting out every day?
we're actually up to fifth grade, and at my school, they go out for recess every day. If not, the kids are going to be looking like, what is going on? In PE, we actually have a gym space, so we don't go outside most of the time, and not unless we have to be moved out of the gym for something. So that's the only time we really go outside. But most of the time, we use our gym space because well, closer to the end of the school year, it gets extremely hot. And right now it's really cold and we're not used to it. So some of the kids are not prepared for that winter weather, as we would say.
How many kids? Give me again the age group that you're working with, and what do you do for PE, which I assume is physical education, or there's not another more sophisticated word? Okay, and what are they doing? I mean, I'm in kindergarten, so am I like lifting as much weight as I can, or how does that work?
Oh, well, actually today, because even though we are not at school today, we are doing virtual lessons. So today our objective is to identify 3 movements they can do that makes their heart beat faster. So we're learning about movements that will make your heart beat faster. So all my students have been videoing themselves doing different activities. We also teach them that activities that make your heart beat faster are cardio exercises. So they learn that it makes their heart stronger. So that's the kind of things we're focusing on in kindergarten. It's our exact grade level outcome that we're working on.
And in sixth grade, what would a grade level outcome look like?
Well, we'll kick up a notch, even though I don't teach sixth grade. So for my fifth graders, we're
Fifth
working
grade.
on, yes, we're working on not identifying, I'm sorry, applying the 5 components of fitness with exercises. So they have to identify the 5 components of fitness, and then they have to apply different exercises in each category. So example would be if I said cardio, they would do jumping jacks. If I said muscular strength, they would pick push-up or something like that.
Well, let me try to embarrass myself then. So the others are going to be balance and flexibility or something in that world.
Flexibility, yes, yes.
Okay. Um, Not eating immense amounts of food at as many different fast food restaurants as I can.
You get that body composition that would help with your body composition, most
Okay.
definitely.
I got one more. I need a hint.
We have muscular strength, muscular endurance, cardio, flexibility, and body composition.
So endurance is the one I missed. Okay. And is that across the board? Are those, I mean, do we have like firm, like these are the things you're supposed to do? So we have 2 Michelles today, and I've been confusing all morning. So Michelle Carter, tell us where you are and what's going on behind you, because you're probably not in a room in front of a wall that has those signs on it.
Well, I'm in Northern Virginia area, so right outside the Washington, D.C. area. I work for Shape America, the Society of Health and Physical Educators, which Brett is the president of. And so we are a national organization, and we represent the voice of over 200,000 health and PE teachers.
Slow down.
So those
There are
objectives.
wait. There are 200,000 health and PE teachers in the U.S., yes?
In the
Or-
U.S., yes,
Okay.
sir.
That's in how many? That's a very high number, or higher than I thought it was going to be.
In 50 states plus DC.
Okay, and how many schools do you know?
I do not know
Okay.
that. No.
So on average, how many PE teachers are going to be in a school? 500.
It really is going to, in 500, a school
500
of
kids.
500.
Yeah.
It could vary. My daughter is at a school with about 450, and she only has 1 PE teacher. So, and this is where, and like Brett, it depends really locally what your district allows. I know when I taught in DC public schools, I was I was full-time, but I split my time between 2 elementary schools, and I would travel between. So I'd spend about 2.5 days at each. So it could really vary. And then there's some schools that don't even have a PE teacher or a health teacher.
So what do they do?
They'll find creative ways to, I know some states, the classroom teacher is responsible for delivering health and physical education.
Fair enough. And other Michelle Huff from New Jersey, tell us about what you do, because you're on the front lines as well, right?
Yes, I am a teacher at Metuchen High School, and I just, previously was
So
in a middle
Metuchen
school
is a
too.
New York City suburb, yes? Sort
New
of.
York City, New Jersey. Oh,
I know it's in Jersey.
Oh.
Jersey people are very
Oh.
proud of New Jersey. I get that.
but yes.
Okay.
It's in the suburbs.
Mhm.
And I just was recently teaching in Plainfield, so that was inner city. So I have, experienced 6th through 12th, and I am in person hybrid. So I have students that come in and then also students that are virtual. Whereas the beginning of the year, I had just in Plainfield, they're all virtual. So and my sister actually works in Plainfield. So I see, like, even though we're 15 minutes apart, the schools, how some students are receiving just, remote learning, and then others are receiving in person. So it's very a unique time, and teachers have had to be really creative. And I think that why health and physical education is so important is because our subject area bridges the gap between every other content area. Like, it's just as equally important to keep our mind healthy as it is our body.
All right.
A
So
lot of the time people, they don't see that connection with health and PE, but that's
now
what
none of you are using the term gym. That word hasn't come up at all, except once as a space, as a physical space. So something changed, because when I was in school, I took gym, and you guys aren't describing it that way. So was there like an
No.
official, like on June 8th, 1988, we made a decision nationally to not call it gym? Like, is there a substantive difference, or is it just the name? Anybody jump in?
I'll jump in and I'll let Brett follow up too. So gym is the location of where physical education happens. And so we like to make that distinction in terms of that, and really speak to what our goals are. Is we want to educate. There are objectives, there are learning goals that we have, kind of what Crystal was talking about with grade level outcomes and whatnot. And I'll let Brett add on to that.
When I was doing my undergraduate work back in the late 80s, I had a professor who even back then didn't want us to shorten anything. It wasn't gym, it wasn't PE, it was physical education, because he wanted to make sure that we were talking about something that is respected, and it should be respected. There still are pockets around the country that teach or call it gym. There's even some people in my district who still call it gym, but usually after a short conversation with me, that never happens again. With
Okay.
160, 150
And what about
But
health? I'm sorry, go ahead.
I would like to say that some of us have made a distinction between a gym teacher and a physical education teacher, though, too. Because when I talk about a gym teacher, he's the ones that you see in the television shows or in the movies, the ones who's rolling out the balls, playing the games that are not socially emotionally supportive, like dodgeball. And then the physical education teacher actually is the one who's looking at using the national standards or the state standards, and trying to make certain that, as Crystal and Michelle were talking about, their students are learning. It's not just being active and playing games. And so that's the distinction that many of us are making when we're talking. If someone actually asks, well, are you a gym teacher? I said, no, I'm a physical education teacher, and here's the difference.
And does that physical education teacher occupy about an hour of instructional time per week? Am I about right, or is it more or less?
That is, again, a state by state and a local control situation.
In Wisconsin.
So in Wisconsin, at the high school level, it is 3 semesters of physical education to graduate high school over 3 separate years. So that is daily for most schools for 1 semester per year, and then nothing
Daily.
Daily. Okay.
But does that mean I'm doing the same thing every day, or does that mean I'm playing tennis one day and bowling another day or something?
Again, that depends on the program. Most programs, they have units of instruction, and so they might do tennis for 2 weeks, and then they move on to another unit of instruction.
Okay. What about other states?
At the elementary
level in Wisconsin,
8th through
first.
6th grade, it's 3 days a week, but here's where the law gets funky. It's 3 days a week by a licensed physical education teacher or under the direction of a licensed physical education teacher. And so that's where schools, I've only got 2 schools in our district who actually have 3 days a week or more of physical education for every student by a
How
licensed
long is
teacher.
each one? 45 minutes or something?
Between 30 minutes to an hour, depending on, again, the school program. Many schools don't want to do a short 30-minute session because they want to give more prep time to their classroom teachers at the elementary level.
Right. There's that balance. There's also
Yep.
kids have to change and unchange, or
That is not at the elementary level. That usually doesn't happen.
Okay.
It's not happening even as much at the middle school and high school, where hygiene is really important, and we keep talking about this. The reality is that, matter of fact, I showed this when I'm explaining this to my physical education teachers. It took me 10 minutes one day to pull up about 20 pictures of adults working out in jeans.
okay.
So at workout clubs. You know, it's like there's a cultural change going on that we don't necessarily have to change clothes. I don't personally agree with that. I think you need to because of hygiene, but we need to be aware of what's happening within the physical activity culture going on in our country.
Okay. So let's go around. So in other places, how much time is typically devoted? And I guess it's different in the youngest grades, in middle school and in high school, but on average, or you can kind of connect some dots, how much instructional time per week is devoted to this?
Let me jump in before the others, and I'll just
Yeah.
give the example directly to the south is Illinois. They still have the strongest law when it comes to required days per week. They have to have physical education daily for every school year for the entire years of your time in schooling through high school. But they also have the weakest waiver conditions. Kids can be waived out of physical education for a significant number of things.
Okay.
So really, it is a local, state, and local to control issue. Sorry.
All right, but give me some examples, some other examples. So Wisconsin, we talked about. Other places, what's going on in Jersey?
In Jersey, thankfully, I see my high school students every day. And then they have a 10-week period where they'd have health. And that was the same in middle school. So it's one marking period of health, and the rest of the year they have physical education.
And that's every school year beginning which grade?
In the school districts I taught, in 6th through 12.
Okay.
Elementary school may vary.
Vary from what to what roughly? A day a week or more than a day a week?
I'll let Crystal take that one.
Okay, Crystal, it's all yours.
I don't want to be wrong.
Yes, in my area, and I say the whole Memphis area, because I'm actually in a small town right outside of Memphis. Yeah. Most schools are either one day a week or twice a week. That's pretty much all I have seen my entire career.
Full hour or less than an hour?
Oh, now that varies. Depends on how many students you have. I was at a school that was a larger school, and we had 35 minutes because we had to have 3 classes in there. It was 3 teachers. So we had to get them out quicker. But in my school now, we're at 55 minutes.
Are we changing clothes in and out or not?
Oh, no, I don't know of any elementary schools that change.
Okay, so that's not an elementary school thing. Okay, so Michelle Carter, what are you thinking about?
Well, my daughter, it looks like they have about 45 minutes if they're in person, and that's with like music, art, and PE. When she's virtual, because they're hybrid, she gets about 20 minutes of live instruction from her teacher. And then
How often?
Once a week, just once a week.
Once a week.
Now, I was teaching
the music art PE once a week as well.
And Spanish, they offer Spanish at her school.
So it's a special. It's not
right, an extra. They call it an encore. In my county, they call it an encore. When I was teaching in DC, I was switching between schools, and one school I was at, I saw them every other week for about 30 minutes, maybe 40 minutes, every other week, which that was really not fun.
When you see them, because Crystal, you mentioned 5 different types of exercises, 5 different components, right? Are they doing are they just simply jogging and they're done? Are they simply like doing the tennis and they're done? Or are they actually going into all of those 5 areas, if it's 5 days a week, roughly in equal portions? Like, what's the balance? What's done and what's not? Because some things you need equipment and facilities for, and other things you just kind of need to just get up and do it.
Well, for my students, we do units. That's so actually reason we're on this topic now, because we're teaching fitness, and I make it fun for them. Even though it might include exercises, they don't really realize it. They think everything is a game by the time we get done with it. And so an example is my 5th grade students. Of course, we're not using equipment right now, but we are face to face. And we're doing something where we call sport ed. So we kind of added that sport idea to it, because they're on teams and they have to work together to earn points. And they're doing fitness activities, but they get to create things. They have a voice in what they're doing. They get to choose their names. So they're really enjoying themselves and doing fitness at the same time and learning about those components. We also have a pre-test where they can then identify those components. So before we even start, I want to know what they know, so then I can gauge where we need to go from there. And then at the end of that unit, we do a post-test, so then I can see their growth from the beginning to the end.
And they can too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, all right, all this sounds lovely. I'm still not completely sure. I'm not sure that this applies to every kid in equal portions. Let me say it that way. So I'm a kid who certainly would have gotten a lesser portion, but now I devote more time to fitness and exercise than I ever have in my life. I also know more about my body, I guess, than I've ever known in my life. And that's because of this nice man who lives in the neighborhood called a cardiologist, right? So, so at some point I became motivated. Now, when I look around at most adult friends, and I was a very, very poor physical education student. So I didn't want to do it. I would run away. If you have a rope hanging from the ceiling, I'm like, I'm going to do what? It's like, you're going to get up there. I'm like, there's not a chance I'm getting up there. And I'd walk away, or I'd run away, or I'd go to the principal's office or find someplace to hide. And the gym teacher would be somewhat abusive to get me back in, usually in front of other people, so that either if I didn't cry, I was really trying hard not to, or I was just actually kind of afraid of breaking bones. So the fundamentally ridiculous part of that is so different in my life than it is now. But as Crystal, you're talking about everything is a game and all that. I got to tell you, when I work with Mark for a half hour at my gym and I'm trying to pull those things without necessarily smashing myself up against the wall, we ain't playing no game. This is very serious, very concentrated, deeply sweaty work. Now, you've got a whole lot of, you got 200,000 teachers. I can imagine, multiply that by X number of students. Not everybody's getting the kind of attention that I'm getting from Mark. In fact, almost none are, right? So what do you do with me? Because there's a lot of me's in that situation. Because I got to tell you, I love talking to you. I get the willies when I do, because it's like, oh my gosh, those people are physical education teachers. I don't know what they're going to do to abuse me. So
it's actually like #random acts of kindness week. That's why Michelle Carter has that as her background. And today is to be kind to yourself. So I feel like that mold that you just described as a quote unquote, your gym experience is what we're all trying to break that mold, and teaching the whole child and giving student choice and make lifelong learners out of our children.
My student choice would have been, can I go to the library, please? That would have been student choice.
Right.
So is it that, so if I landed on your doorstep as a student, as a 10-year-old, tell me about my life as the kid who never got picked even ninth for the baseball team. What does that look like?
I definitely want to speak on that, because I really think that's even though you're hearing me saying we're on fitness unit, that's just so happen the unit we're on. That is not every unit we do. And my students, the first thing I do as soon as they enter my room is I greet every student with a smile. I make sure to encourage every student. I go out of my way. Each student, I want to say something every class period to every student in my class. I let all my students know, like I just got done doing online, you are amazing. You do great things. All I ask my students to do is try their best. I tell them, you can't do do any more than that. And I let them know that. And if I do have that student that I notice might be a little shy and back it up, I'm going to go over and talk to that student. I have an area where my students can give feedback on the things that they like, things that they don't like, and they actually get to see those things implemented into our classroom.
Okay, all great, okay? But there's this rope hanging from the ceiling of the gym, and you can be as nice to me as you want to be, or there's some other torture device. So
I don't have those things. I don't. When we come in, it is
do
so
those not
colorful.
exist? Because when I walk into my gym, I'm like, oh man,
no.
I don't want to touch that thing, and I'm paying for it. So have the torture devices more or less been eliminated? I mean, I'm overstating this, but there, as a 9-year-old or 10-year-old, look around going, this is scary. Many people are bigger than me. I'm going to get hurt. I don't want to get hurt. I need to go away. I need to run away.
Right.
So is that culture? Like, you guys have figured that out, is what you're telling me?
Yes. And even though you heard me talk about teams and scoring points, it's really not like a true score points. They were receiving points for encouraging others. Everyone can do that. I look at also breaking skills down. I don't grade you on if you can score a point. I look, well, did you have the fundamental basics of that movement? So everyone can learn the movement. You might not score the point, but that's okay. That's not what I'm looking for. Once again, I'm looking for that you try your best.
All right, but
and
but
to
there's
add,
a bogus thing here. Hang on a second. I had to take 4 classes in gym or physical education or whatever it was in college. And the only reason that I'm sitting here with a college education was because I knew how to keep score in bowling, especially well. But the idea of actually bowling was a disaster. So, I mean, I listen, we're all being nice to each other, but there's a point where you actually have to do the exercise and get fit and lose the weight and all that, right?
Well, I think to Crystal's point is that the way that we refer to 21st century physical education is that there's really a focus on student relationship and building those relationships, because really, if you had a different teacher, even though you were scared of that rope, you may have been more willing to try. And so what we want to do is build up students. We want them to try a variety of activities. So basketball may not be your thing or these activities, but they're really having a lot of choice and different ways that students can engage in activity and in the curriculum and the activities that the teacher has available. We want to provide a lot of choice.
You remember the movie Grease? And John Travolta kind of went from one sport to another, and he didn't do particularly well in any of them. I'm like, yeah, I can relate to that. So some kids are just not that good at this.
And that's okay. There's the thing about it, Howard. That is perfectly okay. And that's the thing that we're still trying to fight, because we do have programs out there that are more traditional. They're run by gym teachers, not what we call physical education teachers. But that's okay if you're not good at it. The thing I tell my teachers, when we're grading at the high school level specifically, we still have too many of our schools that only do basketball, softball, football, and named other sports like that. I said, you got kids who will never like a team sport. There's some research out there that talks about after age 26, only 5% of adults over the age of 26 use a team sport to be physically active and healthy. And I believe it. The reality is we have to find those activities, help those students find those activities that they like to do. It might just be walking. I enjoy going for a walk. I enjoy going for a hike. It could be any of those things that we're trying to do. So, for example, one of our high schools does a phenomenal job. They have a geocaching unit where kids are going around and they're getting their physical activity. They're getting their cardio because they're walking around trying to find these caches.
But don't gamify it so quickly for me. Let's stay at basics for a second.
Yep.
I don't think I ever had a teacher who said, why don't you just walk? Now, I mentioned that for a specific reason. I walk 5 miles a day, pretty consistent. Today I'm not walking because it's crazy weather out, but pretty much every day it's 5 miles. So I think I've walked enough to pretty much hit like East Coast to Western Nebraska, maybe even Montana, since this whole thing stopped, and I enjoy it. But I never knew that was something that I would be capable of doing. But the more I did, now the reason I mention that is I think kids should be walking in school probably several miles a day, several times, a mile here, a mile there, But when I think about the school buildings, and I've been to school buildings all over the world, the ones have an outdoor campus, I can understand it. The ones that don't, and I'm a city, I'm a product of New York City public schools, we had a schoolyard, but it really wouldn't have been set up for walking exactly, right? And the neighborhood was okay, but a lot of neighborhoods aren't. But to me, if everybody just simply walked, we get what we need in the John Ratty book Spark and all that I'm sure you guys are all familiar with, in which I'm getting some exercise several times a day, which allows me, in my case, to write or do other work as an adult. I think that applies.
Mhm.
So I try running, not so much. I try team sports, not so much. But in the gym with a grown up standing next to me to make sure I don't plaster myself, that's good, but it's very individual. So we've got 70 million kids, and not all of them are at the perfect weight. And we know where that's going. So are you feeling like this is working? Because when I look at, almost any student population in many areas, and you break it down into ethnicities, I'm seeing a lot of kids I'm seeing a lot of, the future of diabetes walking around. Help.
So, and I don't want to monopolize things here, but you hit on a couple of things that are real important to understand, I think. First off, is that weight and BMI, body mass composition, are very important factors that have a lot of things that are impacting, not just physical activity. And that's that's where we start getting to talk about healthy eating. You will not hear me talk about nutrition. I talk about healthy eating when we're talking with our teachers. So it is also having to do with where they live, the type of family structure that they're in, the type of food that's available to them in their neighborhoods. So there's a lot of confounding factors, and so we cannot just say it's just physical education that does this. But it's a
thought for a second.
Factor. Yep.
So for me, at least in the programs that I've been in as a grown-up, it's pretty clear that what I put in my mouth is the primary factor, and that the exercise, no matter how hard I work and how many miles I walk, is secondary to what I'm eating and how much I'm eating. So if that's so, are we teaching that? Because I know that's got to be part of your world. And if so, let's go around that dial again. How much time are we devoting to that? And to what extent are the kids absorbing it?
I think that, Howard, it all stems from the relationship that you build with your students, because students don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So that is first and foremost. Once they can trust you and you build that rapport with them, then it doesn't matter what you're trying to teach them, they're all in.
Yeah.
So you know what I'm saying in the aspect of anything with health and PE wise, and teaching in general, if you have that rapport with your students, they're going to listen to what you say.
So you're teaching them about protein and carbs and all that, and are you doing it once, or are you doing it every year? What's the reinforcement like? What does the system look like? And is that part of physical ed, or is that a different subject? How much time are you devoting to it?
That is, again, it's a state-by-state situation. In Wisconsin, health education is a separate subject, but taught by classroom teachers at the elementary level. Middle school might be a classroom teacher, might be a licensed health teacher. High school, it's a licensed health teacher. Many times, most of the time, it is a physical education teacher who holds a dual license still in our state.
Okay.
But other states don't have a health requirement at all. So
most states do, most states don't.
I don't know about most, but I'm not certain. It's
okay.
About where that
Anybody
is.
else know?
Michelle, any idea?
Can you repeat the question again?
How many states have a health requirement separate from a physical education requirement?
We have a Shape of the Nation report. I don't know off the top of my head. It gives a really great picture of what states require PE, how many minutes a week at each level. I believe in that report, we could find generally how many require.
So Crystal, in your world, how much time are K through 5 students devoting to health? And specifically, I'll say, what they eat, the relationship between what they eat and their body, where fitness fits into that, where cardio fits into that. Is that a unified topic, or pretty much we're still in the land of physical education being about the physical part of that?
Well, we sprinkle it throughout, and also our teachers hit a lot of those health components. Also, it's kind of taught between the both, the classroom teacher and the PE teacher. We kind of collaborate on it. They bring this form around, and I let them know which ones areas that I'm hitting. But we do sprinkle it out. That fitness and health is something we talk about all year. It goes also. We also talk about cooperating and being kind to each other throughout the year. So certain things is just something we talk about all year long.
How many students do you see, right? I mean, what's your student population for your life?
On a normal year
Yeah,
or
sure.
COVID
A
year?
normal year. No, forget it.
800 students.
Okay, good. And of those 800, would you say that what percentage of them would you say you would put into the overweight category, and what percent would you say you put into the obese category? About.
I'm really not sure when my students come in. That's just not something I look, oh, they're overweight or they're obese. I'm looking at, let me get to know you. That's really my focus.
Okay.
And I didn't get to mention this to you, but I really wanted to let you know, our focus at our program is to build confidence in students, build confidence in their movements, build confidence in them sharing their thoughts, and build confidence in them sharing ideas with each other and interacting with each other. That's our main goal.
And
I think
when they're
that, oh, sorry, Michelle.
I was just going to say, developmentally as well, their body composition still has a lot that can change. They're growing, they get taller and things like that. So that isn't something that we focus on. In our national standards, though, we do have specific grade level outcomes for nutrition and what should be taught around the topic of nutrition in that regard.
And I was just going to say that I think a lot of it is leading by example. And Crystal does that so well, because I've seen her videos of how she interacts with her students, and you could tell the relationship they have. You could tell that they've built this trust. They're fun, they're engaging with one another. And the thing is, so what Crystal's doing, if she is, say, eating some carrots in class, they're seeing those skills being taught like through watching Crystal. So everything is leading by example as well.
I'm going to add one more thing to that, just really quick. There's another thing that we can teach nutrition, and we also really want to teach the value of what physical activity plays into our lives, right? That it's a way to express ourselves, to move, for health, for challenge, as a way to socially interact. But we do have to talk about that at 7 years old, you probably don't have a lot of choice in what you eat. And so a lot of those nutritional decisions are going to come from your parents. And then if you're in a situation where you're in a food desert and my options are limited in access to healthy foods, and then we also know that a lot of the times healthy foods are more expensive than the unhealthy foods, right? You can get a pack of ramen noodles for 10 for $1. And so those things are into consideration. So what we are doing is we're instilling the knowledge. We want to teach and educate and help students make healthy choices as much as possible, because when they get home, those things are out of our control. And really some of those are going to be financial choices that come to the parent.
Now, I'm not in love with this source because it is Wallet Hub, but what I'm seeing as you're speaking is that Memphis is number 5 on the list of obese adults, number 40 on the list of, let's call it 250 cities, of overweight adults, 6th on physically inactive adults. So there's a lot of work to do. Now, when I spend time with kids, and I interview kids all over the world, I want to point your attention towards a young woman who I met 12 years old, I think, in Philadelphia. Charter school, bright. And she explains that her father has diabetes. I'm like, well, do you know that diabetes often will jump from one generation to the next? No. Okay. Tell me about like your father's habits and all that. Well, he tries, but he has an insulin pump that's okay. Type 1, type 2, type 2. Okay. And how you doing on weight and what you're eating? So I'm doing good. I'm doing much better than I was. And she's probably 250 pounds at 5'5", 5'4". What'd you have for breakfast this morning? Well, I only had 1 egg McMuffin, so I'm down from 2. I'm like, do you have a sense of what that means in terms of your blood sugar. She's like, I've heard of blood sugar. I don't know what it is. I'm like, well, you probably have a lot of it, but let's begin to kind of walk that through. How much do you know about diabetes? She said, not really much. I know it's a disease. I'm like, all right. And has the doctor, well, maybe clinic. She said, yeah, clinic. Has the clinic spoken to you? Well, yeah, I'm pre-diabetic. I said, do you know what that means? No, not a clue. So then I go to the teacher and I said, you know, you got a girl who's probably wants to know this and really it's going to greatly affect her life. She said, well, I don't know anything about it. I'm like, well, all right. So I happened to have gotten in through the president of the charter school. Just happened that I'd met somebody at a conference. And so I went back to her. I said, so diabetes education? Because you got a lot of girls who are looking like her here. And I'm concerned. And in 15 minutes, I told her more than I think anybody ever has. That's not good. And she's like, well, we had a grant program about 5 years ago, but it ran out 3 years ago. And I said, well, slow down. If she's not learning it at school, she's not learning it from her parent, and she's not learning it from the clinic. So I looked at the girl. I said, listen, your best option, because it's your life, is go to the library and get Diabetes for Dummies or something like that and just start reading it because nobody's going to help you. Now, that's a pretty severe problem. She had no, and this is a pretty good school. She had to work hard to be in this school. As I've taken that story to different kids around the world, it's like, yeah, we never, and I make a point, of course, of talking to kids who may have a tendency in that direction for weight or whatever, and nobody knows anything about it. And then when we talk about obesity and what they eat, that education's not there either. And then when we talk about exercise, it's not there completely, right? So I applaud what you're doing. And I believe that the positivity and the relationships with the students and all that stuff is terrific. But what's the end game here? Is the end game to have people who are fit for their lives and considerably healthier? I mean, we've lost a year or two on life expectancy in the United States this year, but we're certainly not making progress. We're now falling further and further behind many other countries. And that's not because, I mean, they're all getting better and we're getting a little bit worse. So what are we doing here and what are we attempting to do? You guys are all good-hearted, you're professionals, you're trying to do the right things, and yet when I meet her, everything crashes for me.
I would like to say something. The part about she went down to that one sandwich, I probably would first say, well, I'm glad that you improved. Because
I said that to her.
Right. Yeah. And I'm thinking in my head, that would probably encourage her to want to do better. And then, I mean, I could totally go into giving her tips and things, but you don't want to discourage her and you want her to encourage her. And I don't want to just send her off. I want to give her feedback in a kind way and something that she can remember, because I want to build that relationship, because that is key.
In my 15 minutes, I tried to do that, but I know I'll never see her again.
See, and I there are kids that you, like you described, who are in my district. And one of the things, again, that, and I've seen them also in other districts, and we have a lot of work to do, like you said, 100% agree with you on that. All right. What we need to do as a profession is really, really stop just playing games. Okay, it's just that simple. There are teachers out there, that's all they do. They play games with the kids because it's fun. That's really important. We have to have fun, because if they're not having fun, they're less likely to do it as they get older. Okay, that's number one. So we have to do that.
Do we know that from research, or do we believe that? Do we know that from research, or do we believe that? I'm not challenging it. I'm just curious what the source of that idea is.
So there is research out there for that you learn the skills you learn in elementary school through before you graduate high school. If you have those skills, you're more likely to do that activity later in life. So, for example, if you never learn to swim while you're a child, you're likely not going to learn to swim as an adult. Yeah. If you never learn to ride a bike, that's why we actually have biking programs in our elementary schools that we're trying to expand. So that's my point. It's like we are trying to teach the skills, the knowledge, and then hopefully develop the attitude to be physically active and well for a lifetime. That's the goal that I tell my teachers. That should be what you should be doing. And again, we have a lot of work to do in this. There's no doubt. And we need the reality check that you just gave. we have to keep on hearing it, because as good as things are, there are still kids who are not getting that. And so
Most, I
totally
would
agree.
think. I mean, the pattern seems to be, I get through my college years or the equivalent, military, in reasonably good shape, 30, start picking up some weight, start picking up some more weight, got career, busy, I don't do it. And then there's a reckoning when I'm 45 or something, where it's like, oh my gosh, I can't wear any of those clothes and the doctor is beating me up. And what am I eating? And I don't know how to do it another way and all that. And then by
Yeah.
the time you're 55, the doctor is just pummeling you. And then by 65, you get an opportunity to develop an intimate relationship with a cardiologist.
And Howard,
So,
this is where the skills-based health and physical education comes in, making good decisions. Like that's what the Shape America national standards are, like analyzing influences. What environment around, what influences you to behave the way you are, or to engage in activities that you're in, decision making, goal setting. These are the things and the language that we need to change, and utilizing platforms like this to speak to other people that might not even be in our health and physical education profession, but to speak on this and the importance of health and physical education for the whole student. I see Michelle. Go ahead, Michelle. You're ready to go.
No, you're right. And I'm thinking about, to Howard's point, you're right. I think, we spend a lot of time on reading and we spend a lot of time on math. And I don't think there's any educator that doesn't want kids to be healthy, but we don't always show that through our actions. Health and PE is marginalized. It's on the chopping block. We're underfunded. We're competing for, everybody's trying to get a slice of this pie that's not already very big. And then on top of that, we're fighting the stigma. We're still fighting the gym teacher that wants to have the kid in 2021 climb the rope. So there's a lot of things that are going on, and through teachers like Michelle and Crystal and then Brett and then our organization, we're trying to change the way health and PE is viewed in our country. We're trying to educate teachers to teach high quality physical education that isn't just rolling out the ball or happy, busy, fun. If they're moving and they're having fun, we're good to go. We want them to be healthy. We want them to empower them to make healthy choices, and to value it and realize that role that it has in their life, so that when they are an adult, they're equipped to lead healthy, active lifestyles.
good. Okay. And are we measuring that from K on up? Do I have a little book that I take with me? Because I got a report card, right, that has A's and B's and 2s and 3s and stuff. So I have a weight chart and a height chart and a BMI chart, and I keeping track of what I'm eating, right? Everybody does that, right?
We have fitness measurements, and what we try to focus on is goal setting and teaching goal setting as a way, because children developmentally, it's so many different factors of BMI, height and weight, growing, and those sorts of things, that we don't focus on that piece of it, but we do focus on the correlation between eating unhealthy foods and what effect that it has on my body. We do focus on, if I take a fitness test now,
How often?
and
How often?
so that can be throughout the year, and it really, I don't want to say stinks, but a lot is led up to what is locally controlled, what is being mandated, and what Michelle teaches in her district is very different than maybe the middle and high school teachers are teaching in Crystal's district. And so we have our national guidance that says, here, this is what you should be teaching, and this is what you should attain for. But at the end of the day, they have to follow what is being mandated by their district.
And listen,
local district.
I really applaud the way you're turning this, but what I'm sensing that needs to be done, and let me do a little bit of a key point speech here. I want to take every single grade, and I want the very first thing they hear from the principal, the assembled faculty on the stage is, listen, you guys are going to learn a lot this year. And there is nothing more important than your body and your mind. So you are going to devote 20% of the time in school to this. And we're also going to ask you to spend 20% of your time outside of school. And from here until hopefully the end of your life, You're going to measure stuff like you've never measured it before. So you can see not only whether you're in the okay area, but what to do about it if you're not. You're all going to work together. We want to have
So,
the healthiest school in the universe. Does that conversation ever happen?
well, this is why I'm like, it's such a whole thing that like there's so many moving parts that go into it. When you think about where when we were at No Child Left Behind, and administrators have this pressure of testing and test scores, we get pushed down to the bottom, even though realistically, when we're adults, like we were talking today, I don't remember much from geometry, but I sure am more focused on what I'm eating and how much I'm moving, because
Absolutely.
that's what's very important to me now. And this is where I talk about nobody wants unhealthy kids, but we don't place the value and the emphasis there in a school system. We don't, I can tell you, when I first came teaching into DC public schools, the food that the kids ate, I was shocked. Then I moved to another part of the city and they were getting whole foods brought into, so many moving things. But my thing is, if we place the value of what health and PE, the value of true, like taking care of your mind and body, is where we can start, because we have to place that value there. And through these things, kids learn, I think, that way as well.
And I would say that, Howard, that there are pockets of individual schools or individual districts that actually do get this. There's, and I can't, maybe Michelle can remember, there's a superintendent from Kentucky that our past president has done some wonderful things around focusing his entire district around student and staff wellness. And so there are places that are starting to get it, but the movement is incredibly slow.
So here's the thing
And
that's
I
so.
could give you, Howard, an example, because our district in Metuchen, we have a coping skills team. So now we are combining together educators from every grade level, and we're utilizing different coping skills, such as the Health Moves Mind skills from Shape America, for every single educator in every school within our district, and making it known that it's okay to take a mindful minute. It's okay to do better breathing. It's okay to do movement in your math class, in your science class, in your history class. It's actually going to improve your academic performance, because you moving, exercising across your midline is going to create new interactions within your left and right hemisphere of your brain. So districts are, I know I'm getting louder, but I'm very passionate about it, because I love that what our district is doing now and forming this team and saying to the teachers, it's okay. And teachers might be like, oh, a classroom teacher might think that, someone's going to pop in and observe them. So they might have been scared to do these things before, or they don't know them. But guess what? Now we're going to educate them. And that's where all of our districts need to go for all of the subject areas.
So there's a huge expense associated with this too. Just to take your math example and go a little further. So if students don't remember math, there's very little economic consequence for nearly the entire population. They'll be able to make, use a credit card and all that. I don't even know if we'll have checking accounts, but whatever. But if you don't get the fitness thing down, so I added up cardiovascular diseases and type 2 diabetes and looked at the amount of money we spend every year in the United States on that particular set. I knocked down about 10%, which would have patients who would have ended up with that anyway through some other condition, maybe 15%. There was enough money to pay every public school teacher in the country, give each of them a 25% raise, and rebuild every school building every 10 years in the United States. And there was still money left over. Now, if people don't learn social studies, I'm guessing the numbers wouldn't look the same.
Right. So
the economic power of this is enormous.
I don't think
your school power is really kind of example here, example there. That's a real mismatch.
Yes, I've always been a firm believer that I feel like if people don't, we're undervalued for that reason. I've said we are the preventative medicine in this country. If we're health and PE teachers are the preventative medicine, if our profession was valued in that way, and because of the caricatures and the experience the real experiences. The other thing that I want to add, Howard, to one of your points too, is when you're thinking about kids, kids don't see themselves 40 and 50 years old and worrying about diabetes. Even that girl who's 250 pounds, she's not thinking that way. They're very in the moment. So one thing we're also trying to show the value of physical activity is, how does it help me right now? How is it impacting me today? When I am not feeling well and I'm feeling down, physical activity is also a way that I can boost my mood.
Yeah.
It makes me feel better. It has all these other immediate effects that I feel right now that we've also seen that it clicks with kids a lot faster with them. And then also, hey, guess what? Right now, you're feeling, when you come into Crystal's class and you do a check-in, and maybe you're just feeling okay, or you're a little bit upset. And then when you leave her class, you're, hey, I'm feeling better now. What did you do in this last 45 minutes that is making you feel better? How can you apply this at home? And then longer term, also, this is going to help you live a healthier life, because when you get older, you're helping preventative things too. But I think what we're trying to do too is we're trying to say, this is how it helps you right now. And in addition to, it's also helping prevent these other diseases, so that you're just healthy overall, and that the mind-body connection.
I think that's a great point, that for a child, for anybody, but for a child, centering it in the present moment or the next week is about the horizon. Like to say, when you get older, this will help. That's the math excuse. You know, you're going to need to learn all this math because you're going to need it later. I don't care about later. I care about this week. I'm crying or whatever. So
Exactly.
So for me, if I'm not feeling my best, or I'm down or whatever, I take a walk. And miraculously, when I get back from the walk, my perspective has changed. I take a walk. Crystal, you deal with kids who are of all younger ages. Do they take a walk? Like, how do you deal? Like, can you connect the mind and the body for them? And specifically, what do you do, and does it work? And can you do it at scale?
Oh, yes, we definitely do that, because a lot of them, we try to make sure they can take responsibility for their behaviors or whatever. So we really teach them that, so they know if they need to have a calm down moment, they can go over, take a break. I come back, I talk, because we want to have that reflection moment too. And so we discuss and decide what's best, what we need to do next. So I really give my students that time. I also, just like Michelle, Huff, we do the mindful minute. So at the end of class, we calm down. We have moments where we talk about how to reflect. What does that breathing technique, how does that help you in moments where you're feeling tense or stressed? So we talk about those type of things all the time.
That helps. But for me, and it's just my body, if I walk, I can mindful minute all I like. I can talk to other people. I can chatter on the phone about everything that's wrong with the world and all that. But when I take a walk, and I get a little bit of air in my lungs, and I start kind of just doing whatever, you guys can probably explain it better than I can, I feel different. And often I feel better. And then if I go out and take another walk a little later, miraculously, I feel even a little bit better. Now, if that works for my body, wouldn't that work for the 8-year-old who just had a rough night? I mean, is that, or am I oversimplifying it?
Yes, I agree. Yeah, I agree. That also comes into knowing your students. So you might have one student that might work for them, the other student that might not. So you get to know your students. You have to build that relationship with them, so you'll know, well, I know this student might need to go take a walk, might need to go get a drink of water. Well, this student might just do better with just sitting down.
I'm talking about a physiological difference.
Yes.
I'm not talking about a feel better difference. I'm talking about when I walk, I'm exercising my muscles, and respiration's different, heart rate's different. I'm doing something different. I'm not sophisticated the way you guys are at this, but is there a place to walk? Is that something that is encouraged, whether it's walking or do something? Like, is that part of it in a substantial way?
One thing that you said that is something that we like to change the mindset of is, you said even while you walk that you talk about all the problems in the world. So one thing that these walks can do is you could focus on your mindful senses, focus on the environment, and let go of any negative thoughts. We try to teach them to focus on gratitude, and it makes you happier, and, focus on what's around you rather than what's, all like negative things that may be swirling around. And that's a game changer in health and physical education.
And I would go jump on there too to answer your question too. I've got one of our principals who used to be a physical education teacher. Her students are no longer sent to the principal's office. If there's an issue in her school, she goes to get that student, and then they go for a walk.
Oh,
And
excellent.
they talk out the problem that had happened in the classroom. And she swears by it. It's just making a huge difference in her building. So it's phenomenal. And again, I share that story, and this is the frustrating part. We're all advocates here. We share these stories all the time. It's not changing behaviors fast enough by the adults who are working with the kids. It's just our reality. So we just have to keep on showing the data and giving these great examples.
If that's the way you do it. So you're trying to make an argument through reason, through example, through instance, through illustration. Unfortunately, as I think we all understand from the world of education, that's not how people learn. And it's certainly not how people change behavior, right? There's an emotional component, there's a family and legacy component. So you guys may have the most important job in the entire American education system. And yet you have not the least power, but you're certainly not high on the rankings of power.
Can
So
we say that again, Brett? I mean, Howard, I saw Brett wanted to talk. You said we might have the most what?
most important role in the entire education
Absolutely.
system, but you have some of the lowest power ranking, if we want to turn this into a video game, right? So you need to change this.
Yeah.
I guess, because as a taxpayer, as a concerned citizen, as a guy who's trying his best to stick with the program and stay alive, I need all of this to be all around me, not
Yes.
exceptions, not just sort of an elevated gym teacher, but something much more. Yeah, the mindfulness, yeah,
Right.
all of that stuff. But you're not important yet. I mean, I love you all dearly, but this
Sure.
isn't a subject that people talk about. They talk about STEM. So how do you guys change the game? Because if you don't, people die. A
So
lot of people die.
I want to jump on this because I want to go back to how you teed this whole conversation up about your experiences as a student in physical education and how you hated it and wanted to avoid it. I'm still believe, unfortunately, that's the stigma that we are fighting against. That there are so many people who did not have a quality program that actually has harmed it, that they think, oh, that's just PE, it doesn't matter. And I think that's part of the problem. And I firmly believe that this is a long-term fight. The only way we can change that stigma is to change the behaviors of the teachers who are teaching right now. And that's
I agree.
the goal for Shape
Could I
America
take
as
that
well.
further and say the only way to change the stigma is to change the teachers who are teaching right now?
We
That's
need to
different
educate
from,
them.
well, but do you have the right ones? I mean, you guys seem like the right
I
ones, but you got
so
200,000 people. How good are they?
I'm going to jump out there with the topic of reimagining schools, right? So I'm going to go a little bit farther on this one. And I think I'm really jumping out on a limb. If I could personally reimagine a school, I would create a different subject and I would rebrand physical education to help alleviate the stigma of climbing the rope, playing dodgeball, and have a more holistic approach to the way that we teach health and wellness. And it would be the mind body connection, nutrition would be a big piece, all these other elements that come into it. If we're reimagining how that looks, because I do think, to Brett's point, we are fighting an uphill battle all the time because, one, we have a lot of teachers that aren't connected to proper and best practices. We have the funding and just not, where we are in terms of what you call the ranking in the education system. And then really just education as a whole isn't properly funded. So everyone's clamoring at the same pennies essentially. And so when you have a limited amount of money, where does priority go a lot of the time? So,
and not to mention, a lot of teachers are struggling as well in every subject area. And that's why health and PE is so important, because we have the tools and skills to help every person out there. And so we are important. And we try to teach through our subject area that everyone is important.
Oh, yeah. And then COVID, but right, to make things even more complicated. All right. So I want to say you guys are doing it sounds to me like you're pointing very much in the right direction. It sounds like you need a lot more power, just sheer somehow letting people know. And at the same time, you really are as Crystal explained over and over again, working with, and you guys and Michelle as well, that having the one-on-one relationship with a student related to mindfulness and well-being education and trust and all of that makes all the difference. And without that, you can't get anywhere. So that seems to be the admission ticket. You got to have that before you can have anything else. But the other side of that is it doesn't work if you're only getting them until 18 or 25. You actually have to get them until their 80s and 90s and all that. And that's a huge job, particularly because you can't see, hear, or touch them for the majority of that time. So you just have to kind of turn it up, twist the spring and then let it go and hope you did enough in those first 20 years to keep the thing in motion for the next 60, 80. Tough job, but you guys are, off and running. So we're going to roll credits. And then afterwards, if you guys can hang out for a minute, I want to show you something. Okay. So thank you all very much. For on-demand episodes and more, visit our website. Kids on Earth contains hundreds of video interviews with students from around the world. Learning Revolution is a global collaboration network for people who care about learning. Be sure to join us next Thursday for a new episode of Reinventing School. Thanks for watching.